Hey, what's going on guys? It's your boy Meteor Kaiser back here again with another challenge video. On this time we're going to be jumping into Persona 5 Royal. Definitely my favorite Persona game. I love 3 and 4. I love the characters from 3. I love the gameplay from 4. But I love a bit of both in 5 and Royal especially because it just adds on to how great 5 was. Anyway, we're doing a pretty simple challenge this time where we're just going to be doing an Arsene only run. So that means we are not able to switch personas anytime in battle. We must only use Arsene. Now this will not apply to having other personas. I will be able to have other personas in my party, mainly for social link reasons. Social links aren't as important, but there's a few that are pretty useful, like Hifumi's, and then Ryuji's obviously. So I still am allowed to have other personas in my party. I'm going to have limited usage of what I consider the game breaking things in the Velvet Room. Those include Lockdown, which increases the persona's stats if you let it sit there for a few days. So that's good after you've beaten a palace. Though it's not as game breaking as the next thing I'm going to mention, which is Fusion Alarms, which if you haven't played Royal, it's essentially if you do enough battles, the Velvet Room will turn red instead of blue, an alarm will go off, and you'll be able to strengthen your personas even more than you were before. They'll get better moves, you'll get better items from itemization, you'll get more experience from using the electric chair. And if you do it enough times, eventually you won't get experience on your main persona, but you will get stats instead. And that's how people are able to get to 99 in each stat for personas, because they just abuse that system. I'm not going to abuse it, but I'm going to use it because it is in the game and it's part of what I'm allowed, or I should say allowing myself to use. But we won't even get into that in this first part because I'm going to be splitting this challenge up into a few videos so you guys have some oh, if you like Persona, you're good. If you don't, I'm sorry, but this is honestly one of my favorite games. But I say that about every game I play. Well, I picked the ones I like the most to do challenges of because I'm most familiar with them. And in this game I've played God knows how many times. So we've gone over the main rules there, but a few other things are I am allowing use of DLC. Not like I didn't pay for any DLC, it's more like just what was handed to you if you played 5 and the free stuff. So I'm able to use like Orpheus, Izanagi, Thanatos, Gatsu Izanagi, Kaguya, and Ariadne, the one I can't pronounce, and all of their Picaro versions in order for, I don't know if I need to itemize them, or if I need to use them for Gallows, or if I just need them as confidant boosters. Of course, I also have the DLC, the costume DLC, and I'll be swapping out my costume in between palaces. And then the last thing is the stuff that you get if you have a Persona 5 file on completion on your PS4, which are the 3 Hyo whatever apples, the full health apples, and a bit of my starting cash. I will also be playing this on hard difficulty, and yes, when I get to Okamura's, we'll be swapping that up a bit, but y'all already know the reason if you've played this before. But yeah, I think that goes over most of the ground rules. If there's anything else that pops up, I'll mention that midway. But for now, let's just jump into it. And before we jump into this challenge run, guys, I'm going to be that guy again. If you haven't done so already and you're interested in seeing more of this type of content, please feel free to hit that subscribe button. It really does help, especially as I'm trying my ass off to grow out this channel. So thank you guys so much. Enjoy. So the game starts out just how Persona 5 does, with us escaping from this casino looking place. But instead of just getting out like last time, we actually have a little helping hand. We get trapped by a few guards, and then a mysterious masked figure comes in and says, yeah, ikimasu yo, senpai. Oh yeah, talk about that. Yeah, I play in Japanese because, you know, sub over dub. But anyway, after getting the help of the mysterious girl, we jump out of the palace, or the area that we're in. I guess we don't know it's a palace yet. And we get captured. We wake up to getting drugged, and then we have to sign a contract. It's basically like, hey, what difficulty do you want? We select hard, not merciless, because we're not psychopaths. But actually, I think hard is harder than merciless, because the difference between merciless and hard, essentially the main one is if you hit an enemy's weak point, on hard, it does 1.5 times damage. On Merciless, it does 3 times damage, but that applies to both you and the opponent. So it's a little bit safer to play on hard, but if you're able to exploit weaknesses, it's a little bit easier to play on Merciless. So we go ahead and name ourselves what is considered the canon name, which is Ren Amamiya. I could have just named myself Meteor Kaiser, but you know. And we get introduced to Sai, who's basically, this entire game is based around her interrogating us on what has happened in the past. So we'll be seeing us in that interrogation room pretty much throughout this entire game. As we're trying to remember stuff to tell Sai, a little mysterious butterfly comes by and says like, hey, your victory lies in your friends and your bonds and your nakama, you know, standard One Piece fairy tale stuff, you know. After that's said and done, we actually are able to get started on the real game, which opens up with we have quite a few cutscenes opening up, which opens up with our boy Ren getting on a train to Tokyo from wherever he lived before. It shows a little bit of his past before he was on this train, about him getting arrested. And we see a little bit of Arsene in the background in this cutscene, which is weird. We get off the train. We walk around in Yogen Jaya, where we're going to be living, to try and meet the person who's going to be taking care of us. And that is Sojiro Sakura. He's an acquaintance of our parents, so he lets us stay with us for the year while we're on probation from, essentially, we assaulted a woman, but we didn't, if that makes sense. Because we protected this woman from this drunk guy. But the drunk guy got the woman to say that it was us. So, yay! Nothing like false accusations going to prison, right? Yikes. Anyway, we clean up our area a bit. We sleep, and then we get introduced to the Velvet Room, which there is a long-nosed fella who you might recognize if you played another Persona game. And then the 2 sort of helpers of the Velvet Room for this game, Caroline and Justine. Igor sort of gives us the thing of, oh, you're going to be tasked with a rehabilitation thing. You gotta get through your trials. There's only one way to save you, to getting saved, if I could speak. The next day, Sojiro sort of takes us to what's going to be our new school, the only school that would take someone who's been on probation. And so they're basically like, oh, don't make any trouble while you're here. Oh, this kid did some bad stuff. Oh, let's all discriminate against him. Damn, it do be different over there. Long story short, Sojiro's like, hey, while you're in my care, don't fuck up. A few more cutscenes play, mainly talking about the mental shutdowns that have been happening around Tokyo at this point. For the first few days, we sort of just obeyed the instructions of Sojiro, so closing the door, locking it up, closing the cafe that he works at, which is where we live. So nothing too exciting for the first few days. The next day we go to school for the first time, or so we think, because we run into this vulgar boy, and by the time we reach the school, it's turned into a castle, which was what happened on this weird little app thing that Ren has on his phone. He's not Joker yet. Yeah, that's one thing I forgot to mention, is Ren has this weird app on his phone that he can't delete. And every time he tries to delete it, it just pops up the next day. And that was the little thing for the past few nights. It's ASMR Meteor here with a bit of an addendum. This app is known as the MetaNav, and this is how we're going to be going to the palaces. The MetaNav needs 3 things: the name of the palace owner, the location that it's at, and what the palace owner thinks of that location. With those 3 things, you're able to enter someone's palace. Anyway, we go inside this weird looking castle thing with this vulgar boy. We get thrown into the basement prison, and we see, well, we don't really know him very well, but we see this he's a half-naked guy in a crown, and we learn that this vulgar boy's name is Sakamoto. The crowned man is a shadow version of Kamoshida is his name. He is the PE teacher and a former Olympic athlete for volleyball, who has a very bad track record with Sakamoto. He ruined Sakamoto's life. Anyway, they try and kill both of us, both Ren and Sakamoto, and then somehow, Persona happens. We have a mask we rip off, and then our other self, I am thou, thou art I, comes forth. And we get introduced to the first battle with our boy Arsene, who is never leaving our side. Well, I say that, but there'll be something. We kick the ass of the guards, lock Kamoshida into that cell, and try and escape. But we run into this weird talking cat who is not a talking cat, aka a simp lord himself, Morgana, who also has a persona. So we escape the palace with him. Escaping the palace means we go to the real life counterpart of where the exit of the palace was. In this case, it's the front gate of Shujin Academy, the school we're supposed to be at. We finally get to school and it's lunch, and then they're like, oh, you're a delinquent because you didn't get here sooner. So there's a bit of a running trend that starts occurring around this part in the game. It cuts back to us in the interrogation room with Sai. Sai shows us a picture of our next target and then tries to figure out why we targeted said person. In this one, it shows a picture of Kamoshida. She's also going to be doing that a lot for the confidants. Be like, and it's the stupidest thing ever with the confidants. Say, for example, let's take Hifumi. That's a good example. Hifumi is a shogi player that gives you certain strategies to use in battle. Sai's like, there's no way you could have done this without beautiful strategy. You must have had an excellent strategist on your side. Tell me who it is now. And then the confidant starts. And there's been plenty of memes based around this, like, you figured out how to use a toaster. Someone must have taught you. Tell me who it is now. You started the toaster arcana. Yeah, that'll also be a running trend. So yeah, we get introduced to the class. Everyone is like super scared of us because we're a delinquent. And the only one that we can fit in with right now is Sakamoto, who we get introduced to as actually just Ryuji Sakamoto. So we call him Ryuji from now. Makes that easier. We also have our first run-in on the next day with the red-haired girl with the ribbon. Yo, Shizawa. For the next few days, we live out our school life. And by next few days, I mean until after school. We go ahead and try and figure out some way to get back into the palace. And then we realize, oh, it happens through our phone. So we go ahead and explore this place a bit more with the help of Morgana again. A lot of the opening tutorial fight stuff happens, teaches us about all the mechanics, all-out attacks, guns, party tactics, standard stuff. We explore the basement a bit and find a bit of evidence of Kamoshida's wrongdoings. Now, the cognition between the palace and real life is obviously different. Basically, what goes on in the palace is what the palace owner, aka in this case, Kamoshida, thinks about certain people. So, the volleyball students that are here are treated as slaves. They're abused, they're beaten, but these are just the cognitive forms of the students. But in real life, this abuse is happening. We try and escape, but then we get caught by Kamoshida. Ryuji's like, hey, I've had enough of your shit. And he just unlocks his persona like that. We got the persona Captain Kidd, which all of these characters are going to be based off of mythological tricksters. That's what it is supposed to be, but Captain Kidd is just that pirate. Did a lot of bad shit. Now we have 3 party members with Ryuji in the mix. Ryuji is a very physical attacker, so he has Zeo skills as well. Anyway, we go ahead and beat the little guard captain, and we escape from the palace yet again. Something I need to sort of clarify as we're going into this is, 1, each character's got an actual name and then a palace name. So it's what they use in the palaces to hide their identity. So Ren is going to be Joker, Morgana is Mona, I know, useful, and then Ryuji is Skull. It's mainly based on what their mask looks like. And then Joker, because he's a wild card. Ooh. Each character also has a specific element that they work with. So there are electric, ice, fire, wind, psychic, nuke, light, dark, and almighty. Those are the categories of magic skills, and then there's just physical attacks. Arsene is technically a dark, but he sort of becomes whatever because we just give him whatever skills we can get at the time. Mona is wind, and Skull is lightning, electric, whatever. After escaping the palace, we start our first official confidant, which is the same thing as social links back in 3 or 4, where we hang out, we spend time with each character, and we get bonds with them, and it unlocks certain abilities. So our first one, of course, is going to be Ryuji, and he is the Chariot Arcana. Each character has an Arcana from the standard tarot cards, and he is Chariot. And we also have unlocked Fool from Igor, the master of the Velvet Room. Next day at school, we ask around to the volleyball students about how they're getting abused by Kamoshida. Because Kamoshida's thing is former Olympic athlete, right? So he's got a lot of status in the school. So he pretty much is able to do whatever the fuck he wants. So people, like parents, teachers, all of them ignore the abuse that's happening because they know how good he is at volleyball, and they want their kids to, become great at volleyball. So there's abuse and there's even sexual abuse, which is awful. He's probably one of the most fucked up palace owners. So they really hit you hard in this first one, and we get the most integrated with Kamoshida out of any of the palace owners because he's the opening one. Because normally the other palaces are like 1 or 2 days you're in and out, depending on how good you are and how well you are at like SP management and stuff. We'll get into that. But Kamoshida's is like, hey, you're here like for like 6 days before you can actually start the mission. After sort of asking around for the volleyball kids, we run into a cat, and wow, it's actually just Morgana in cat form. His world form right now is a cat, but he doesn't believe he's a cat. He thinks he's a human who's gotten trapped in this cat-like body. On our way home, we see one of our classmates, the half European, I think. She might be half English. Anne Takamaki, who's sulking for some reason. So we try and figure out why, and then she runs away from us, and we try and catch up with her. That's not weird at all. And she sort of tells us how Kamoshida's basically trying to, I don't know how to put this any other way, but fuck her. And Anne's been trying to put it off for a long time, like getting involved with Kamoshida, but she wants to do it because her best friend Shiho is a part of the volleyball team. Well, saying she wants to do it is kind of a rough thing to say. It's more like she's willing to sacrifice herself so Shiho can have a successful career in volleyball. She goes leaps and bounds for a friend, but in the end she's just sacrificing herself. We listen to her problems, but we can't really do anything about them, unfortunately. The next day is fun. Not fun, but fun. Because we come to school and we see a giant ass commotion outside because Shiho, that girl that was part of the volleyball team, attempted suicide. Yeah, this game's fucking rough, dude. Yikes. And I'm not trying to downplay the effects of, an attempted suicide. It's just, there's not really much you can say in this sort of situation. So we go and try and see what happened from the front, and then you know what people are like. They're just taking photos. They're like, oh, she's fucking hurt. And then An comes in and like helps her out. Shit is whack, dude. Anyway, during the commotion, Mishima, who has also been abused, runs away, and so we're like, oh, well, let's go catch up with him. And he sort of tells us why that happened, because Mishima was the one that had to bring Shiho to Kamoshida when Kamoshida sexually assaulted her. Yikes, that just hurts to say, man. Fuck. After that, we go and confront Kamoshida, and Kamoshida's like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're getting expelled. I'll bring up your expulsion in the next board meeting. Yada yada. After that, we enter the palace again to try and figure out more shit about the palace, essentially. But An accidentally comes along with us, and she gets captured by Kamoshida. However, same thing happens with her that happened with Skull. She's like, nah, I ain't dealing with this shit anymore. I'm gonna go unlock my persona and shit. So she unlocks Carmen. And she is a fire-based persona user who is probably going to be one of our main party members throughout this. One, because decent-ish waifu material. And two, because why not? She's got some good healing skills. She's got good damage. Anyway, after anyone unlocks their persona, they become completely exhausted. So we have to leave the palace after that happens. So we leave the palace. We see something. I'm not gonna point it out, but I'm gonna point it out. We start a confidant with Anne, and this is the beginning of the Morgana simp train, where he calls her Lady Anne. Oof, yikes. The next day, we go to a few shops in order to prepare to enter the palace. So these being a clinic, which you could buy like medical supplies, and then a model gun store, because the thing about the palace, right, is all cognitive. So if the enemy believes the gun is real, the gun will become real. We can get model guns and not actually fire in the palace. Each character has a different type of weapon. Joker has a pistol, Ryuji has a shotgun, and Mona has a slingshot. And then also Anne has a submachine gun. Anyway, we buy a few items. We buy some better armor, some better weapons, some better guns from our boy EY. And we'll be here a lot probably. Later in the day, we get introduced to tools, which we can make certain things. The most important one of these would be like the lockpick for treasure chests. There's also go homes, which is exactly what it says. Calming aromas, smoke screens. Right now, we can't really do much because our social stats are pretty low. Now, we have 5 different social stats which you can get stronger in. There's guts, kindness, charm, proficiency, and knowledge. You do certain activities, you hang out with people, they'll increase certain stats. Those stats will be able to get you to do certain other confidants. Certain missions and certain confidants require you to be like rank 4 and so and so. And like the more, like for example, making tools increases your proficiency. The more you have in proficiency, the more tools you'll be able to make. So that type of thing. Anyway, the next in-game day, the 18th of April, is when the palace or the game officially starts. It's out of tutorial stuff and we're able to explore all of Kamoshida's palace, because we have 14 days to steal Kamoshida's heart before we get expelled. So if you leave it too late, you'll get a game over. We get ready to jump back into the palace with Anne as our new party member. Now we have a full team of 4, that being Joker, Mona, Skull, and Panther, who is Anne's nickname in the palaces. So now that we have full access to the palace, there's a couple of concepts I just want to go over real quick, alright? So the first one is SP management. In order to use skills like Garu for wind, Zio for electric, or Daya for healing, you need SP, or I don't know what SP really stands for, to be honest. But it's whatever. It's like mana. It's like, think of MP. Your SP, unlike HP, will not restore in the palace. It restores after you leave the palace, or if you use items, but it's like MP in that sense. So you have to be very careful with managing your MP. So it's good to use physical skills when you can, and try and limit your amount of like Daya usages and stuff. Now we have DLC as well, right? That DLC that I mentioned gives us certain accessories. The ones that we're equipping for now gives us a 15% experience boost. There's others that increases stats, nullifies certain weaknesses. They're basically very helpful items. But there's also a couple of accessories that'll recover SP, giving us the invigorate ability. But for now we don't have that, so we'll have to deal with it, and we'll have to limit our usage of certain moves. The other thing is we now have access to using the Velvet Room inside of the palace. It'll be at the entrance of any palace. However, when you get to a safe room, you'll be able to immediately fast travel back if you need to edit it for any reason. Now they're forcing us to, they're showing us how fusion works, and they're forcing us to fuse Arsene away with Pixie. So unfortunately, the run is over. No, I'm kidding. As soon as we get Agathion, we go ahead and rebuy Arsene. So it's not our original Arsene, but there's really no choice. We also have 6 slots for personas, but as we unlock more of the full Arcana, we'll get more and more slots, up to like 12. The game sort of went over this already, but you can recruit certain enemies by speaking to them and trying to negotiate their assistance. And that's how you get more party or more personas. So, like, again, in this sort of run, it doesn't really matter, but I'm so used to getting other personas that I just do it anyway. And plus, any persona that you've had, you can buy it back. So if you have enough money, you could just infinitely fuse things. We start slowly making our way through the palace, being, again, careful of our SP, trying to knock down as many enemies as possible. If you hit an enemy's weak point, they're getting knocked down. And if you knock down every enemy in the battle, you'll get an all-out attack, which is basically mass damage to the entire room of enemies. You can hide behind certain objects, you can ambush enemies, to get the first strike. So a lot of this stuff is very simple RPG mechanics, but sort of placed into a more bougie way of doing it, essentially. A little bit more flamboyant and out there. There's also this, we have a couple of other things that we get access to in this palace. A third eye, which will let us know where certain treasures are. We can steal treasures from certain objects in the palace, and that gets us money later on. We can see how difficult an enemy, like a fight, will be. Red means difficult, yellow is in the middle, and then white is easy. And there's also grappling hooks, which gets us to places we can't normally access, and that's a royal exclusive thing. Anyway, we just make our way slowly through the palace until we run into another royal exclusive thing, will seeds. Will seeds are certain items that you'll find in the palace that'll give you a little bit of SP recovery. And if you collect enough, you'll get a certain item out of them. So it's worth getting all of them. And to be honest, I don't remember where all of them are each time, so I have to look it up. Actually, we white out once because I get surrounded. Ooh, if you get surrounded, it is not fun because you're not able to exploit enemies' weaknesses as easily. And it's just kind of gross. Once we hit about halfway through the palace, just under, I want to say, we run into our first mid-boss, which is the Archangel. It's a really easy mid-boss because it's there to teach you about a mechanic. The mechanic here being guarding. So certain enemies have attacks they'll charge up over a couple of turns or a turn, in which just does a crap ton of damage. But if you guard beforehand, it'll do less damage. So they're basically telling you, hey, right after he charges, go ahead and hit that guard button because it's going to be a gross attack that Archangel is going to send out, or Heavenly Punisher. Each enemy has a persona name and a non-persona name before you know what they are, because they'll remember their true selves after you bring them to your party. Right now he's just Heavenly Punisher, but he's actually Archangel. It's a lot of tutorial stuff in this first one. It'll be a lot less convoluted in the next palaces after this. Anyway, we beat the Archangel. We make our way past the cathedral looking place. And this is when we officially get our first will seed, but I was a little preemptive on that. Next thing, we've got to go to this little tower area from the main building. So we head outside. There's this entire area with level 9 enemies, Barith, which you'll probably want to avoid if you can. They're pretty scary. And plus, I don't really have the best things for them because they're weak to ice, and we don't have anyone that has ice skills yet. So we won't be able to do anything with skill cards until the second palace anyway. So we're stuck with what Arsene has as his moveset for now. Before we go to the next area, just make sure you're looking around certain places because these will seeds are going to be hidden. And to be honest, it's probably better to just look it up online. The second will seed, the green will seed, will be located just past the tower. There's an area before you get into the tower, in like the inside part of the tower, in which you have to grapple up. You grapple up all the way by pressing L1, and the green will seed will be hanging out around that area. Then you can just head back down, go into the next area. Once we enter the next area, the tower, we actually are able to immediately go and get our next and final will seed. So there's a red will seed, a green will seed, and a blue will seed. The blue one is always guarded by a mini boss. This final will seed is located just at the base of the tower past the green will seed, actually, funny enough, pretty close. You have to take an elevator down, and then that will take you into a trapdoor painting. That trapdoor painting opens up, takes you to the lobby. Then you have to go down to the basement from there, and there'll be a little path to the blue will seed from there. So just make sure that you are prepared before jumping into it. This one is Mara, or Torn King of Desire. Mara is famous, or infamous, for being a penis-shaped object, and that hurts saying that. Our strategy for this guy is to actually just slap him asleep, and I also am able to knock him up with confusion. So like a typical RPG, both enemies and allies will be given certain status conditions, right? Sleeping, which is self-explanatory. There's confusion, which is also self-explanatory. Brainwashing is attacking your allies or the enemy's allies. Fear is, not wanting to fight. Hunger is each move does less damage. I don't think I'm missing any more, but if I am, I'll go over it eventually. Anyway, we jump back into the tower area, which is what I consider the most annoying part of this place. It's because, one, we have that Heavenly Punisher guy, but in actual form, and he'll do a shit ton of damage to you. Also, Eligor does a shit ton of damage to you, and I get whited out, I think, once. Eligor is like Bereth, but higher level. So, honestly, I get pretty lucky, because he's weak to Zeo, and I also shock him. And if an enemy's shocked, they won't be able to do anything until you attack them next turn. Now, with status, there's a system called technical. So if I shock an enemy and then I hit it with a normal attack, it'll be a technical attack. So it'll do more damage, and it'll probably be a crit. So it'll knock an enemy down. Critical attacks will knock enemies down, much like a attack on a weakness. So we reach this area where we're supposed to cross a bridge, right? But the bridge has a bunch of axes, and so we can't actually get through there until we get a couple of keys. So they are on guard captains, which are basically like regular enemies but golden, and they're going to be stronger. One of them is actually an Eligor, so we do that whole shock strategy and it works pretty well. Or War Hungry Horseman, sorry. The other one is a little bit more annoying, where it's an RNG fest. There's 2 that we have to get. The Eligor one's easy. The other one is, hey, there's 3 captains, one of them has it, you have to figure out which one it is. Third Eye will help you with this. It's going to be the stronger enemy, essentially. But yeah, we get our ass completely handed to us by this Eligor guy twice. But after we have that, we're basically at the end of the palace, where we cross through that bridge, we fight like 1 or 2 more enemies, and then we reach the palace room, or the treasure room, which where the treasure of the palace lies. That's what we're trying to attempt to steal, is the treasure of the palace, which will change the cognition of its owner and make him or her regret what they've been doing this entire time, if that makes sense. But the palace, the treasure isn't there yet. We have to actually let the real Kamoshida know that his shit's about to be stolen, so it'll materialize, aka calling cards. Yay. But we'll get into that once we've left the palace. I do a bit of grinding here to just try and get my characters leveled up to level 10 or 11. No, I get them to 10, which I honestly should have gotten everyone to 11, because at level 11, our boy Mona learns Medaya, and Medaya is a party-wide healing move, not just a single target healing move. Been useful for the boss fight, but hindsight's 2020. I got bored grinding. Now, we don't necessarily have to go to the palace each individual day, or like we don't necessarily have to spend time immediately at the palace. We have 14 days to steal his heart, so we sort of mess around with what we do. So, for example, the next day, instead of going straight to the palace, I do a rank with Ryuji's confidant to get him up to rank 2. During the evening, you'll also be able to do certain stuff around your room. You'll be able to, once we get them, watch DVDs, play games. Those will increase your social stats. Train, which will increase your HP. Read, which is just reading one of the books that you've bought, which will give you some sort of benefit. Whether that's a social stat, a new location, being better at certain things, like a cheat code for a game so it makes playing games easier, or doing crossword puzzles, which are free, and they'll give you more knowledge. You can also study. You can do a bunch of stuff. It's all about just figuring out what's the best option for each individual day. So the next day I decide to send the calling card, in which it takes a 2-day period. So we give Kamoshida the calling card. He sets his palace on high alert, but he has no, so the real version of Kamoshida has no idea what's happening, but in his heart he kind of does. So like, he has no idea that we're inside of his palace right now, but his shadow version does. So it makes us basically perfect criminals who can't be caught doing anything. Anyway, the treasure is materialized, we go to take it out, and then, oh shit, guess who shows up? But Kamoshida himself, who turns into this ugly ass demon. And I could say demon because it's Asmodeus, or Sugaru Asmodeus Kamoshida. Anyway, we have a little boss fight on our hands here. So he has a few attacks. Volleyball Assault, which will just throw a volleyball at one of your party members. He has this chalice which he can drink to heal HP. And then when we figure that out, we're like, oh shit, we should probably get rid of that thing. There's also like a party-wide little volleyball damage thing you can do. And then the scariest thing is the super attack, which is the gold metal spike, which does a crap ton of party damage. So make sure you guard beforehand. If you guard, it'll probably only do like 60 damage a pop. Before the next super attack hits, it's going to be a cognitive version of Shiho, Now, in order to prevent the super attack from going off again, we have the option of either focusing on Kamoshida or just attacking the fake Suzui or Shiho. After defeating the fake Shiho, Kamoshida can no longer use his special ability because there's no one to bring him any more volleyballs, which is at least a good thing, but he's still got his regular attacks that he can do. Like, even through this fight, we're low on health, and Kamoshida has a crap ton of HP still, so we are worried. So in order to make the odds a little better, we attempt to steal the crown that is on top of his head. Now we send a person over to do that, and that canonically is Ryuji. So in order to get him to steal the treasure that's on top of his head, the crown, we have to constantly be doing damage, or else Kamoshida will be like, oh, where did Sakamoto go, you know? After a few turns of just healing, attacking, distracting, Ryuji's finally able to get up to the top, and he is able to steal the crown. Once the crown is off of his head, Kamoshida is super weak and will not attack anymore. Well, he'll attack, but he'll only use a knife attack, which doesn't really do much. And now instead of doing 60 damage per hit, we do a whopping 200 plus. So Kamoshida goes down in a few turns. So not bad. We get a lot of money and experience, and we're able to level up to level 11 on everyone. Kamoshida kind of regrets what he's done, but he's like, yeah, whatever, kill me. But then An's like, alright, he's got to atone for your sins and all that crap. So after that, his shadow version disappears, or I should say the cognitive version of Kamoshida disappears, and the palace, because the palace owner is defeated / gone, the palace starts crumbling. So unlike Persona 4, you cannot get back into the dungeons after you've defeated the main baddie from the dungeon. So a little anime cutscene with it collapsing, us running through the halls, and we're done with the first palace. We just gotta wait until Kamoshida changes his heart, which will happen in about 12 days. So between that time, you'll just be working on confidant related stuff or increasing social stats, whatever you want to do for that time. You could literally just sleep through it if you don't want to do anything, but that's a you thing. But anyway, honestly, I said I was going to get up to Madarame, and I lied, because this is already a 55-minute recording and it'll probably be like a 30-minute video. And I'm fine with making this a long series. I really like Persona 5, and I hope you guys do too. And trust me, it'll be intertwined. It won't be like a constant just, all right, here's 6 videos for 6 months. No, it'll be intertwined a bit more than that. And if I have to do one per, then that's it. So honestly, starting off Kamoshida's Palace is probably one of the hardest, because we don't have access to any of those things I mentioned at the beginning. No fusion alarm, no itemization. We're stuck with whatever moves that our Arsene has. But it's honestly not terrible, because we have cleave. And if I have to cheese it out and gain experience, like I grinded for a bit here. If I didn't grind, I don't think I would have beaten Kamoshida. So, but anyway, if I missed anything out from this part, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. My name has been Meteor Kaiser, and I will see you in the next part. But until then, as always, peace.